There we go, it's recording. Right, so we can start now. So hi everyone, welcome to another edition of our BI and Data webinar sessions, brought to you by Robert Walters. Today we're joined by George Mulroy, he's the head of data at Twinkle. He's going to be discussing moving towards a self-serve single version of true data culture. So before I pass you over to George, as always, a bit of a shameless plug for myself. We just have the next slide, George. So my name's Chris Ingman, for those who don't already know me. I look after the BI and data market over at Robert Walters. Obviously, it's a senior recruitment consultant, so we cover various different roles in BI and data, whether it be data engineers, data scientists, heads of, obviously BI developers. So as I was saying to George before, we've really picked up. There's a lot of the BI market, especially, has really picked up. So if you're in a position where you're looking for work or know anyone who is, feel free to get in touch. Alternatively, if you're looking to grow your team, whether it be now or in the near future, again, just drop me a message or a call. Happy to give a bit of information about the market, trends, availability of candidates, so on and so forth. And just on the next slide, George, again. So the webinar sessions, so they're going to be a bit more sporadic. Like again, as I was saying to George before, so people are getting busier and busier, so I'm probably not going to do them as often as I used to. However, at the end of next month, I'm actually doing a bit of a series regarding how to implement business intelligence into your business. So basically, we get a lot of companies looking for someone to set up a BI function, basically in the field. So I just thought it'd be good to kind of get a good series together where we can kind of show you how to do it from people who've already done that before. So it's going to be a four-parter. The first part is going to be based on theory and strategy.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Following that, there'll be more about BI infrastructure and architecture, and then finally it'll be how to roll out Power BI. I'm sure a lot of you know, but we host the Manchester Power BI user group, so we've got a lot of good contacts there. So we're going to do a talk on that. So it'll all be pre-recorded, so it's not going to be a live event like this one. So look out for that. I'll post it on the Meetup page. I'll also put it on LinkedIn. And the next slide. That's all from me, really. I'll hand you over to George. So, as always, if you have any questions, if you just put it in the chat box, I'll be manning that. We'll pass the questions over to George at the end. And also, if you can all just put your mics on mute and obviously your video, just to make things run a bit smoother, that'd be great. But yeah, over to you, George.
Great, thanks, Chris, and thanks for putting these on. Been tuning into a few of them myself, and yeah, it's been really interesting. So yeah, my name's George. I'm the head of data at Twinkle, and I'll talk about the company in a minute. So today, just wanted to basically just run through our journey, really going towards this sort of self-serve single version of the truth data culture, which is something we've been working on really I'd say probably the past 18 months. And I want to go through some of the things that have been difficult, the things that have gone well, and hopefully give you guys might have some sort of practical pointers from the bits and bobs we've done. So Twinkle, if you've not heard of Twinkle, we're a education company. So set up by John and Susie Seaton in 2010. At the moment, we've got over 650,000 resources. And by resources, that can be lesson plans, assessment materials, online games. We also do like physical books. And this is to help teachers, parents, home educators, pretty much anyone who teaches. Just to give you a sense, I guess, of the scale of like the data we have. We've got about 8.5 million customers worldwide. Last month, we had 50 million downloads. So you can imagine we're quite data rich in that sense. So we've got a huge amount of customer behavioral data primarily, which we try to make a lot of use of. About me, so my background, actually, I was a primary school teacher, and I came into data analytics about 5 years ago. So I retrained, did a master's in data science at the University of Sheffield, whilst working part-time as a data analyst. And then since then, I've worked at Twinkle, firstly as a data scientist. Then I moved into heading up the machine learning team specifically. And then for the past 18 months or so, I've been in this current role as the head of data. So we'll just really quickly go through, what do we mean by a single version of the truth data culture, because I think everyone's probably fairly familiar with that. But essentially by that we mean one view of the data that everyone in the company agrees is the real trusted version of the data for making decisions. So a lot of benefits that come with that, such as better data accuracy, being able to make quick decisions, confidence in the data, all those sorts of things, which we'll dive into, what the impact of moving towards those things have been for us. So to kick us off, I want to kind of journey back to the data team at Twinkle roughly 18 months ago. So this was before we'd really embraced this sort of single version of the truth. And back then we were a support service. We were referred to, the data team was a like IT or HR. We were one of the support services. And what does that sort of look like in terms of day-to-day work? Lots of Excel, lots of ad hoc requests, very simple sort of SQL retrieval jobs, and endless variations of the same tableau. You use that could be not necessarily just Tableau, Data Studio, but lots and lots of ways of looking at really fundamentally very, very similar stuff. So where have we moved to now? And by getting this single version of the truth in place, we're no longer really a support service. It means that we still do data reporting. That's a very important part of a job of the data team, obviously, so we need to be doing that. But by getting this single version of the truth in place, I suppose we've really freed ourselves up to focus on what I would really think of as data analytics. When I think of what should a data team do, and what should a bunch of data scientists be doing at an organization, it's this sort of stuff for me. So for us, that looks like a resource recommendation engine. We've overhauled the search engine, targeted customer churn actions, and working very, very closely with the like a chief level with the executive officer, with chief technology officer. So for me, a very simple way of summarizing the benefit for us has been that it's massively, committing to a single version of the truth has massively reduced our data reporting overhead, basically freeing myself and individuals in the team up to be able to focus on these higher value activities. So what we'll go through is, I'm just going to go through 3 or 4 steps that we did to get us moving along this journey, and some things that went well, some of the things that I would do differently if we were going to do it again. So the first step that I want to go through is basically overhauling our data reporting. So what was the problem? So this is 18 months ago. 700 plus data reports in the business. 700 plus because I stopped counting at 700. I just thought, I'm not going to spend any more time looking through what we've got. As you can probably imagine, with that amount of data reports, duplication was everywhere, information was pretty contradictory, and people would struggle to find what they needed, as you would imagine, with that volume of data. As a result of that, I'd say confidence was quite low in data and was avoided by some people entirely, which really I think is kind of fair enough when you've got that much data reporting going on. So what did we do about it? I refer to this as the nuclear option at the time. Was we hid everything literally overnight. We password protected every single data report in the business. And what that meant, we said there's a 2-week deadline. If you use a data report and it's now missing because they've all disappeared, you've got to ask for it back, basically. And the reason we I suppose, put the onus on the rest of the business rather than going through them all was because with 700 plus, we simply just couldn't go through them. It's far too many for us to go through. So we said, well, actually, we're not going to go through them all. If you use it, let us know. We'll bring it back. We'll unpassword protect it, basically. And that first step slashed it down from, I say 700, it's probably more like 1,000 if I'd gone all the way, sort of counting. And that reduced it down to 100. So a huge reduction practically overnight. What we then did was we took the 100 that people said, yes, I use this thing, please can I have it back. We assigned those 100 to an analyst, to someone in the team, and then we actually went through them one at a time, really carefully, to look for duplication, look for things that didn't look quite right, and get rid of more, basically, which left us with about 50, which has a drop from, I'm going to say, roughly 1,000 down to 50. And with that remaining, without those remaining 50 reports, we now have a simple set of rules, which it must be named, as in when you go to that report, there must be an analyst name there, so you know who's accountable. It must have a description. And we say that the data sources that we provide as the data team, that they are the only data sources that are sanctioned for use in the business. So if you want to do a pay review for someone, you want to report on sales, you have to use the team, the data that the team has provided, and that's sort of to stop people going away and this issue sort of rearing its head again, basically, with getting tons and tons of data reports. So that's what we did. The effects were sort of pretty much straight away. People could find stuff a lot more easily. And what did that look for us in the data team? What did that look like for us? The NPS score, sort of our internal NPS score for the team, just sort of shot up like pretty much the week after. And the other big effect for us was that the amount of time we need to spend on reports just absolutely plummeted, as you would, of course, expect with that number going down. So I'm just going to go through, looking back on it, how it went, maybe things I did differently. So you could probably imagine when I first did it, it was chaos that morning, obviously. But we had everyone in, had the whole data team in, and we were all just responding to these requests saying, hey, I need this thing back. And sort of genuinely, by about midday on the first day, we'd put out most of the big fires, in terms of, this finance information is missing, etc. We'd got all that sorted by, within a few hours, and then it was just over the rest of the couple of weeks, just bringing back bits and bobs. The other thing that I say with this is, it is quite a drastic option, the nuclear option. Definitely wouldn't do it without backing from a chief level. Thankfully, at Twinkle, the chiefs that we have are very good, really, with data, quite technical, and they were very much on board with this. I think hiding everything without having the backing is probably a pretty good way to get fired. So I'd definitely have that chat with sort of the senior people before going for it. The third point on there, so I suppose it's a bit of an obvious one. Analysts really don't like deleting their hard work, so you kind of go through, like, if we slash the reports down from 1,000 to 50, what does that actually mean? Well, people are deleting a hell of a lot of work, and I think it was the right thing to do. But looking back on it, I think I spent an awful lot of time making sure that it was communicated properly with the wider business and everyone that was on board. Maybe didn't think too much about the fact that I'm actually asking a lot of people to delete a huge amount of work, and I think there's a little bit of pushback there, and that's sort of fair enough. So I think if you were going to go for something like this, one lesson I learned would definitely be to really get everyone on board within the data team that this is get people on board with what you're sort of wanting to do and seeing that it's a good thing to do. And the last point I put on here as well is, hopefully you'd never be needing to do this, because this is not a point you'd want to be at, really. So this is basically what I did when I sort of took this job. They'd never I wasn't sort of taking over the job that hadn't actually been a head of data before. So I think the mistake there was, not having had a head of data, so inherited a, not very good data reporting, which hence us needing to do this sort of drastic action. So yeah, that was the first thing we did. If you can relate to any of that, having tons of data reports and contradictory information, hopefully there might be something useful there to take away. The next thing that we did is overhauling data requests. So although we've just saved an absolute ton of time with the data reporting that we just talked about, we still had a very high volume of pretty low value requests coming through to the team. So what do we do about it? The system that we've got in place now is, if you want data team time, you have to formally request it. We use Jira. We use Jira board. If you can Google Jira, if you haven't used it before. Yeah, we essentially sort of force people to go through a process and say, what need are you trying to fulfill? What data do you think you'll need? Is this a one-off request or will it be regular? I think there's a few more questions than that, but they're the key ones. And just making sure that it's all documented, that we don't have people asking in the corridors, we don't have little Google Hangout messages, that we have a process and people follow it. The effects of that, yeah, pretty much straight away, I'd say roughly a 50% drop in requests, because yeah, people didn't want, a lot of people, when faced with a 5-minute sort of admin task of putting this request through, that the request wasn't sort of valuable enough anymore to justify doing that 5-minute job, which works for everyone, because if it's not valuable enough to spend 5 minutes asking for it, then I think you can probably safely say that it's not valuable enough to do it in the first place. Reflecting back on this, when we were first putting this in place, what a lot of people said to me was, well, you're going to slow even the really good requests. You're going to slow them down, right? People are going to have to spend 5 minutes requesting, and that is right. We are going to slow down. We do slow down those legit requests, but when you compare that sort of 5 minutes of extra per decent request versus the days, weeks, even months that you save from not very good stuff coming through, the net time saving is absolutely massive. That 5 minutes per request pretty much dwindles into insignificance when you compare that with the savings from all the stuff you just full stop not doing. Number two, sort of reflection, probably just a practical point. When we first did this, I was all for every single person in the business must use this, no exceptions. I think you do have to admit defeat at a certain level, that there are some people at a particular sort of seniority level that you just to get a pass, basically. And actually, in an earlier talk on these talks that Chris set up, I think someone said something very similar, and I agree with that. You do have to draw a line and say these people don't need to use the process, and for us, that's the chiefs. The last point I put on here is you will find, or we've certainly found, some people will engage in voiding with this process, basically, if they possibly can. And I think the way to counter that, like for us, definitely has been to make sure that every member of the data team is on board with this, because what you'll get and what we have seen at Twinkle is if you have just one sort of weak link, and I mean weak link in the sense of a member of the team that will do requests without will action requests that come to them not through this process. What do you get? You get every single person going to that analyst because, hey, they know they can skip this 5-minute process. And what does that mean? It means that that analyst is no longer effective because they've got everything coming their way. So yeah, I think the really key thing to get right there is to make sure that you've got your whole team really on board with this system. Otherwise, you could fall over potentially quite quick. The last step I want us to go through, and this I think is probably the most difficult one, and it's definitely one that we're still working on in a big way, is redefining the role of the data team. So one of the things that I noticed when I took into this role was that for whatever reason, it seems sort of a notion that the amount of requests done or the amount of data reports done sort of is sort of equal to success, almost like a volume thing. Like, the more requests, the more visualizations, that's a good thing. And for me, I don't agree with that at all. For me, it's quality, not quantity, and it's picking the high value activities. And I think for us trying to get that right, it's been making sure that when people come to you as a data team and say, hey, I need this thing, I need that thing, that you're laser focused on what they need, not what they've asked for. I think that there's often quite a big mismatch there between, hey, I need this data, often won't be the right thing for what they're trying to actually do. So we sort of say a lot of the time, tell us what data you want, that's fine, but what we're really interested in is what are you actually trying to do, and then we'll help you sort of frame what data you need to do that. And then the other part of it is just making sure that your team feels that they've got the backing and are confident enough to say no. Basically, kind of as simple as that. When something comes through that's not particularly high value, which obviously will do, to sort of say, actually,
participant is
that's
now
not
exiting.
That's not a particularly valuable use of time. So it's going to have to be a no in this case. So the effect of doing this, sort of empowering analysts and getting people focused on the need, it was another 50% drop in terms of requests. We'd still get the same amount coming through, but we were quite comfortable to say to about 50% of them, this isn't something we're going to do. And that might be because, hey, you can get the information elsewhere, or it might just be that it's just not a sort of valuable use of business time. Reflections on this one. I mean, I'd say of the three, this is definitely the tough one. When I ever do the questionnaires with the team, what do you like, what do you struggle with? Pushing back on requests always comes top in terms of saying, hey, this is something I don't like doing, and I think it's fair enough, really. And so I think if you want to have this in place, you've really got to have support networks and be able to back up your team in terms of supporting them in their decisions to either pick this thing up or not pick that thing up. And I think also another quite tricky one, I think that I've sort of put there, data requests fulfilled equals success. It's quite a comforting way of thinking. I think, I've been asked to make this report by someone in the business. I've been asked to do this data request by someone in the business. Hey, I've done that thing. Sort of happy days. And I think it's it's a challenging thing to say, actually, no, that's not quite right. That's not how we measure success. It's more, you've got to decide. You've got to look through what you're being asked for, pick out the valuable stuff, action that, and sort of push back on the rest of it. So you've got to sort of have that safe space for people to sort of, I guess, to fail, because you're going to asking a lot, I think, of your analytics team here to look through all the requests they're getting and saying this one's good, this one's not, and sort of parsing them in that way. And for me, this is very much something we're still sort of working on and trying to get better at, and get sort of, I suppose, establish what the role of the team is. So roughly kind of the different steps, step 1, step 2, and step 3, I put them in order, I think, in terms of both difficulty to do and also a sensible order in which to tackle those different problems. So focused a lot on kind of our journey there, so very much quite data reporting heavy. So just quickly then, what has it meant for us? Well, we've taken all this saved time and reinvested it in data analytics. So what do we do now? We are no longer really a support service, and we arrange ourselves in small project teams. Each team is led by a data scientist, and those teams focus on these key metrics. I've put in examples of some of them there. So for us, search success, so we as a business, we're very reliant on our search bar. People could be looking for resources. Customer engagement, customer churn, retention, and people sort of signing up in the first place. So that's a sample of they're all different. There are 4 different teams that we have here. And just as like a summary side, I suppose, as the benefits we've observed from pushing those different points above, these first 2, I would say, are like direct benefits of pushing a single version of the truth mentality, which is greater trust in the business, in the data from around the business, and faster decision making. I think they're the benefits you actually see sort of concretely in the actual data reporting. And then I think the really exciting bit for me is these last 4, which I suppose are the indirect benefits, which is, hey, it's not specifically because your data reporting is a single version of truth. It's because you've got all this time now that you didn't have before. And what have we done with that? As a business, as a team, rather, we're much more able to generate value and also quantify that value. That works out well for everyone in the team, and it also fits very well with point 4, which is it's now relatively easy. I think especially in comparison to maybe some other teams in the business, for us to justify hiring new people. Don't generally get too much pushback in terms of hiring new people now. It also means sort of onto point 5. It allows when I talk to people who want to work in data, I don't generally encounter people who say, hey, I want to make Excel spreadsheets, or I want to write select statements. It's all, hey, I'm interested in machine learning, I'm interested in big data, and all these sort of exciting things. And it means that by freeing up all this time from data reporting, that there are actually at Twinkle opportunities for people. We hire someone into the team, and the expectation is that they are working on these data analytics projects as opposed to data reporting. And that feeds into point 6, actually, that after going through this change, the hiring process is, we get so many sort of high quality people now, because they're people who see the opportunity to work on these really interesting projects. Yeah, that was it. So quite a quick one. I hope there was some nuggets of interesting stuff there, that just sort of running you through really what we've done. I'll jump over that slide to Chris, but yeah, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to give me a shout now or afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, George. We've had quite a few questions, to be fair, so you might have your work cut out a little bit.
Okay.
So this is just going back to, I think it's an early question, so it's going back to one of your earlier slides, but it's from Scott Marsh. He mentioned as the 700 plus reports all within your team's control to be able to hide. Any issues with business generated reports adding to the problem too, do you find?
Yeah, I think maybe I oversimplified it when I said, we just hid them all and made that out to be sort of a really easy thing. But I suppose it wasn't. We could hide the vast majority of them, sort of with Tableau, for example. We've got the the passwords, we can change them. But going to sort of the business generated ones, so I'm thinking like Excels and G sheets and such like. Yeah, there was a problem there in terms of basically finding them and hiding them. I think the way in which we tried to deal with that was that I mentioned about making sure that everyone knew that if you're using data, it has to come from these approved sources. So even if we couldn't shut them down, which the worst case is when we couldn't, what we could do is make sure that everyone knew that you're supposed to be using from data from our approved data sources, and if you don't, that's sort of on your head if it's not right. So a bit of a difficult one and maybe a bit of a woolly answer, but yeah, it's definitely a tough one.
Cheers, George. So next question, we have Simon Jones. He asks, how do you manage SQL-related SVOT issues behind your reports?
Yeah, so I deliberately in this talk sort of called it single version of the truth and not single source of truth, because behind the scenes, we do have sort of duplication, and there are examples, in sort of mentioned SQL, where we have conflicting stuff. So I suppose my answer to that is we've solved the easiest problem first, in that we've made sure that where data is visible, we have decided which of the SQL queries we're going to use, and acknowledge that behind the scenes there are multiple versions. And I think one of the next steps for us will be moving from this single version of the truth, which for me is very much the data reporting side of things, to actually sort of squashing and getting on top of those behind the scenes, where it's maybe not quite so clear cut. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but hopefully it is.
Yeah, cheers. Next, we have Paul Curry. Paul's asking a few questions, but the first one is, how does your data pipeline work? Is there a separate engineering team?
Yeah, so I think we're probably a bit unique at Twinkle. So we don't have a data engineering team as such. We work as the data team. We work very closely with the web development team. So it's the web development team that sort of, I suppose, capture the data in the first instance, and then we, the data team, are essentially the data engineers. So we ask a lot of the team in that sense, in that they take the pretty raw captured information and convert that into sensible looking tables, which are then ingested by themselves as an analyst and the rest of the team. So yeah, we don't have so summary, no, we don't have data engineering team. We essentially do it as part of the data team itself, which is a big ask of the guys, but it seems to work quite well.
Yeah, just sticking with Paul as well. So he asks after as well, just in relation to development requests, do you just using Scrum, Kanban, or another way of managing work and prioritization?
Yeah, we use Scrum. Simple answer. Yeah.
Cheers. So we also have Hamad Sumru. He asks, can you import SQL reports or queries from an external source?
Not sure I understand the question. Import. Could you just read that again?
Yeah. It just says, can you import SQL reports or queries from an external source? It might be related to something you mentioned halfway through the talk, but it's not context now.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but we use a variety of data sources. So we use SQL reports are what we use for the stuff that we sort of record in-house, if you like. And then we'll use different software for, like, we've got GA, for example. We use BigQuery. So I'm not sure I understand the question, but yeah.
No problem. We'll move on. So Helen Sams Thompson, she asks, how is your data team structured and how do requests move through the team?
Yeah, so we're structured, but basically there's two roles in the team. We have the data analysts and we have the data scientists. So the data analysts are responsible for data reporting in one area of the business. So that might be production, or sales would be another one. And in theory, that they spend 50% of their time doing that. And that's probably when someone first joins the team, they are more than 50%. But they get to that point of data reporting for 50% of the time. And then the other 50% of the time is supporting the analysts with their project work. The other job role is a data scientists, and they are in for 100% working on project work. So they'll come in, they'll get assigned a metric such as, signups, and then that's their job, working on signups, data-driven decisions to sort of work on that metric.
Great, thanks. Next, we've got, and also feel free to let me know when you've finished with all the questions. We've got quite a few, but next we've got Helen Mundy. She asks, are all data requests filled via the data team's reports or via a form of self-service analysis to reduce the request to the team?
Yeah, so I guess the self-serve bit isn't something I talked about much, is it? So we essentially, as part of our request form, which is we use the software Jira, as part of the request form, in the guide to using it, we basically say, please self-serve if you can, and give some sort of practical guidance on how to use stuff to do that. So we do try and sort of fend off the ones that can easily be self-served. And if something can be easily self-served and it comes through, we typically won't do it. We'll just say, hey, here's where you need to go to do it yourself, kind of thing.
Great, thanks. Next we've got John Neary. He asks if these reports relating to are these reports relating to standard bespoke reports, and how does BI self-service fit in at Twinkle within the BI maturity model?
You just there's quite a bit to that one. Could you read it? Just read it out again.
Yeah, sorry. So first one was so he asked if these are these reports relating to standard bespoke reports, and how does the BI self-service fit in at Twinkle within the BI maturity model?
Okay, so yeah, they are sort of standard bespoke reports. So the sort of trying to answer the questions I see it. We typically wouldn't expect people to be asking for new reports. Sometimes they do, but generally we should have that covered, and we say basically use what we've already got. And then in terms of sort of fitting with the BI model, I mean, again, we sort of get people to self-serve where they can. We on the reports we sort of clearly say this is what this needs to be used for. Here's some examples of where you can use it. We'll sometimes put together little sort of cheat sheets to say if you work in the international team, here's like a shortcut to all the stuff you may be interested in.
Cheers, thanks. Next we've got Paul Curry again. He just asked, how do you support Tableau self-service? And also on a slight tangent, he also asked if this is all on-premise or cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, so self-serving Tableau, so a couple of ways in which we tackle that. So first of all, just some training that we just that rolls. So there's just some training every month or so, and you can just sign up to that, and we will go through some practical examples with you. And also, kind of like with my previous answer, actually in the we do have some like guides where if you're putting forward a data request or whatever, we basically have some user guides there where it will say this is how you can go in and use it. And we have like standard filters, like for us, like a user's country or a user's career as a standard filter. So a mixture of sort of training that people can sign up to, and then just some like videos people can watch, and people seem to get it pretty quick. I think it's fairly intuitive to use. What was the second bit to that question? I think there was another bit, wasn't there?
Sorry, Paul just asks if this is all on-premise or if it's using cloud infrastructure.
Right now it's a bit of a mixture, but with a view to going to the cloud.
Great, cheers, thanks. Next we've got Scott Marsh. He asks, did you repurpose the existing staff towards analytics, or did you have to restructure?
Yeah, we, for the most part, yes, we sort of the team that we had before we sort of moved towards this way of working, we're all super enthusiastic and super on board with this way of working. So we have quite substantially changed people's roles, but everyone's been really on board with that and really optimistic about doing that. So both sort of repurposing the team we already had, but also quite a bit of hiring on top of that as well, just to sort of beef the size of the team up.
Thanks. And last but not least, I think it's Paul Randalls. He asks, do you offer self-service access to your data warehouse to non-data team members?
No, we don't. But I think it's an interesting question that maybe goes a little bit back to one of the earlier ones, which is talking about this sort of single version of the truth actually in the back end, which is something we don't really have. So the answer is no. Conceptually, I would like to do it, but I think that would require a huge amount of work for us, at least, to get to a point of that being viable.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think that's it. I think Simon Jones just posted some CV there, so he's looking for work. So if anyone has anything for him, obviously get in touch. But that's it. So, well, thanks, George. Really enjoyed that talk, and thanks for asking everyone's questions. Obviously, if you have any more, just feel free to get in touch with George direct. And as always, as I've said before, my name's Chris Ingman. So again, recruitment consultant specialised in BI and data. So if you're looking for work, anyone's looking for work, or you're looking to grow the team, just feel free to get in touch. Also, if you have any ideas for future talks, or if you have any specific subjects or things to touch on, let me know. Or if you're interested in doing a talk yourself, again, more than happy to have you on board. But otherwise, that's everything. So again, big thanks to George for today and for everyone attending. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Cheers.